Hey guys, welcome to the Legacy Podcast. I am Tim Bratz, and today I'm sitting down with Christina Lock, who owns a recruiting company called Catch. We're going to learn all about what's going on with the labor market, what she sees in gaps and employers dropping the ball in recruiting talent, especially in today's market and economy when the unemployment rate is so wildly low and it's very, very difficult to attract good quality people to your team and to retain those people. So I'm excited to sit down with Christina and hear all things about recruiting quality employees. Christina, welcome to the Legacy Podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
Great.
Excited for you to be here. And we got to hang out. Obviously, we run in some of the same circles. And we got to hang out at your house, about a month ago.
Yeah.
Had a great time. Got to meet your husband and hang out, have some drinks, and sit by the pool and chat about some things. And I love having you here on the podcast.
Thank you.
In order to talk a little bit about your business and everything you got going on. So Really impressive. Kind of what you've built, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. How did you get into starting your own business? How did you get into really the recruiting space? And I want to hear a little bit about the story, and we'll talk about some of the questions and the learning curves and all that kind of stuff as we go along, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, being an entrepreneur, I think, was in my DNA. My father actually came over from Denmark when he was 22, so kind of the true American dream to come over. And I think that's always been foundational for me and my brother, like starting something from nothing, right? Like he had the money in his pocket, barely knew any English, and started a life here.
That's awesome.
So that was always ingrained in us. Is like,
was he like did he work as a laborer? Did he start his own business?
No, he answered a newspaper ad to sell Danish cheese in the United States.
Wow.
So yeah, always been in the food business and has been running his company for 35 years. My brother's now taking it over. Of course, I was the one to be like, hey, I'm going to do this on my own and forge that own path. So I really fell into recruiting. It was one of those things, like I knew I wanted to be in sales and have the ability to be in control of my paycheck, right? Like the harder you work, the more commission. And so really fell into recruiting, but really fell in love with it. Like just working with a candidate, there's only certain things in your life like getting married, having a baby, and getting a job that people talk about, right? Where you're just like, hey, how's the new job? And the fact that we get to be a part of that is so amazing, right? Like I'm not a surgeon, I'm not a doctor, but like changing people's lives for the better is really something that like I gravitated towards and being that connector. So throughout my career, I found this kind of like, I was always starting something, whether it was part of a Fortune 500 or the staffing company I worked for, they were opening a Charleston office 20 years ago and there wasn't a huge market here. And so like that's been the theme of my career. So when I had the opportunity to start Catch, like I had seen done recruiting really well and also not so well. So most entrepreneurs do things because they want to do things better. So that's how I got into starting Catch.
And so, and Catch is mostly the Charleston scene, right?
Yes. So our backyard is our probably strongest market, but we work throughout Southeast, East Coast, and then after COVID, it was national.
All over the place.
All over, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you guys primarily focus, because you were in the software space before, you're primarily focused in that tech software
Exactly.
space. Like, are you hiring admins, or at like what level does it, I don't know, do you guys start, and then I assume it goes up to like a C-suite executives too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So everything from mid-level software developers all the way to like a CTO or CIO. Where we've been really instrumental is because we are so high on quality that we end up working kind of up and across organizations to where they're like, hey, you might not do marketing, but can you just go ahead and help us? And then that has become our professional services vertical as well. So not only tech, but like we work in all aspects of a tech company.
Cool. So explain that, like when you're talking about when they're having you do marketing, in what capacity?
So actually like hiring their marketing manager.
Oh, okay.
But also we do a lot.
So not just the software developers
Right.
and the dev team, it's across the entire team, and just making sure somebody's got experience over here in marketing, but they've also worked with software companies, and
Right.
they can come in.
Yeah, exactly. But relative to marketing, we do a lot with what's called employer branding, which I'm sure many people have heard of. Some have not, but that was a really big sort of move.
Explain what that is.
So employer branding is really like how it feels to work for a company, right? I think you can quantify like what it feels like to use a Yeti, right? Or a consumer product, but employer brand is like, how are you talking about your employer out amongst people, like on social media, on LinkedIn? Are you referring people back to your company and to your friends and family? So we not only, we call it kind of like the life cycle of a candidate, so when they come in, but what are they doing after they come on board to amplify your brand as well? So we've done a lot of consultation around employer brand as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I have a buddy who I think does something similar. Like he's got kind of a staffing agency, mostly works in the tech space, and one of the places that he gets a ton of lead gen is he just partners up with the venture capitalists and the angel investors, and he's like, hey, they're making a big investment. With those investment dollars into whatever this new tech or software business is, the investors, the VC, is looking for, hey, you got to build out a C-suite, you got to build out this person, you need these kinds of developers, and so he's like their go-to person, and he just staffs it all up and puts all the right people in the right seats, and then moves on. Do you guys have like special connections like that where you can just outfit an entire company? Yeah,
and that's actually our sweet spot, right? It's like post-Series A. We have a great example of a client that did accounting software, and I was on site basically, like managing their interviews and that sort of thing. So for over 6 years, we hired about 140 people for them and really stood up a lot of their operations. And I think that's where we shine. Like, I'm super passionate about growing companies. Like, we have some clients that are, I'll just call them like retail, where it's one and done. Maybe they don't need us for a lot of positions, but like when we can really insert ourselves and like build the strategy around hiring and your org chart, that's where we come in and bring that expertise.
How have you seen things change over and you kind of teased it a little bit talking about the employer brand, but how have you seen things change over the past, let's say 5 years, maybe since COVID hit, just before to where we're at today with employees? What are they looking for in a company, and kind of like what's really drawing people in? Like right now, unemployment's super low, so it must be hard to attract talent or get talent over unless you could really have a value add proposition for your company.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, and gosh, I mean, so much has changed since COVID. I didn't think I was going to be asking candidates and companies, like the number one question is this on site? Do you have work from home days, or is this fully remote, basically? And that, honestly, like some people are hell-bent on being fully remote. Some want to be on site. Like it's shifting a lot, that we're finding a lot of remote employees actually want to be with their team again. I think they're tired of sitting over Zoom or, you know. And I think the cultural impact of that too was, they called it the Great Reshuffle or the Great Resignation in 2021. I think the loyalty wasn't there, right? Like if I'm not seeing Tim every day and you're my boss and you know my husband and my family and you're over there in the UK, what, like the loyalty, like you can pluck someone right out of that job. And so I think the sentiment around employer brand and those connections you made, it's like it's hard to beat in person. You know, it really is, like making that human connection. And you know, outside of that too, I think like really the sentiment in the economy is still a little uncertain. I just saw a report come out today that, you know, people are still worried about a recession, right? Is it coming? Is it here? Has it gone? And so I think they're less hesitant to make a move as well, you know.
So they're a little bit more cautious. They want to stay a little bit safer.
Right.
Stay with a job that they know is going to be okay, in a company that they know is going to be okay moving forward, that's pretty stable, as opposed to testing the waters, even though they might be able to make a couple more bucks somewhere else.
Right, or they might have gotten burnt from a couple layoffs. I mean, we hear a lot of those sort of stories as well.
Do you see a lot of that, where people, I mean, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side, so everybody thinks whatever the new job, the new opportunity is going to be better than where they are currently. Are there a lot of people who then, you know, check out this new job, they don't like their boss, they don't like, it doesn't feel safe, it's not a good, you know, environment to work in, right? Like the core values are wrong, or something doesn't fit, where then they jump back or they leave pretty quickly? Do you see that, a lot of that, because there's been a lot of reshuffling in the past 3 years or so?
Yeah, we do see that. Now, candidates that I work with, and we take a lot of pride in this, that we're making sure there's alignment on both sides,
Sure.
right? Like if they've gone through our process and the clients, we have very low turnover rates of candidates that we place, extremely low. But yes, there has been, and especially I'd say.
Yeah, I'm talking generally.
And
like
generally,
in the industry,
yeah, and honestly, like clients are looking at that, companies are looking at that, wondering if this person is a job hopper. But it's pretty common now, right? Whether it's been a tech layoff or, like you said, the grass was greener, maybe couple thousand more dollars over here, but I think that's waning quickly.
I mean, I see it in my own, like everybody on my team was remote, right? And a bunch of us are here in Charleston, at least on the coaching and the education and some of that side. And we just got this little spot here in order to just be together, right? In order to like get away from the kids and just kind of get a whiteboard session going and get and just get out of the house a little bit. And that camaraderie really makes a difference.
It really does.
Like the connections that happen, and you know, when you don't see each other long enough, all of a sudden, I mean, it does not take long, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5, 6 weeks, and all of a sudden you're like, you know, to your point, that I wouldn't say the loyalty wanes off, but like the connection fades away a little bit, you know? And
the banter, the side banter, like maybe there's something that my colleague is saying and it sparks something in me. You know, like when you're over Zoom, it's very much like we're here for 30 minutes and then the call ends versus, oh, I overheard someone sending something on the phone or about a client or an account, and like just like that osmosis of learning is super critical, especially for what we do. I mean, some companies, and I will say software developing companies, maybe not as critical because, you know, you're project oriented and you're working specifically on your task. But anything that you're in, like marketing, sales, agency environments, definitely having that, you know, any ability to interact and collide, right? That collision of idea.
And so that's kind of what I learned as like being an entrepreneur. Like we're all alone, right? Like especially like running your own business. Who do you have conversations with? Who do you have that banter back and forth with? And that's like why the whole mastermind concept kind of came to be, where we can get some business owners together in the same room and start bouncing ideas off each other. But even on a company level of being able to just kind of get in the same room and do a whiteboard session, throw a bunch of ideas along the board and say, hey, this one's good, this one's not as efficient, not as effective, like let's focus on these ones. And just getting that idea, it's you know, Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, and it's essentially whenever you take two minds and put them together, you create this mastermind is kind of the definition behind it. So in order to have those conversations that just kind of create that osmosis is really, really powerful. No matter where you are or what kind of business you have, I think it's imperative to have those kinds of get-together meetings. We have these big leaps forward. Like we'll get the team together probably on a quarterly basis where everybody comes in and we get together, but it's like, shoot, why don't we do this more often? Because we have these amazing breakthroughs just from putting all the brains in the same room. And I think that whole work from home sounds cool, but I know I don't get as much stuff done when I'm working at home, right? When the baby runs over, or the kids, I got to go pick something up, or Kate's doing something. Hey, Tim, what are these? Like she asked me this morning. I'm answering emails. No offense to Kate, right?
I mean,
but she's like, true, you know, hey, where do these toys go? I was like, I don't know. I don't know. But now I gotta set my frame of mind again of like getting back into the focus, like the focus and the setup of whatever the hell I was doing, And I think people kind of have realized that over the past couple of years, where there's this pivot back to, hey, I want a little bit of flexibility in schedule, but I want to go to the office. I want to have that camaraderie. I want that relationship with my team that I don't have or I haven't had for a couple of years.
And I think it's so important you're doing the mastermind. I mean, I think it's incredible, especially entrepreneurs. There was never, I think, if you look at the history, like getting other business owners together, because no one truly understands, right? Like what it's like in the day in the trenches and all that. They're like, I heard this one quote and it was like, you know, owning a business and being an entrepreneur, everyone looks at you like riding a tiger. Like, wow, they're riding that tiger. That's like incredible. But you're on this tiger. Like, what is happening? Like, I have no control, you know? And like, I thought that was just such a great quote because everyone like looks at it as very, you know, majestic. And you're like, wow, this is really scary and this could change at any moment.
This thing's going to bite my neck off. The only reason I'm riding it is because I don't want it to attack me and kill me, right?
So I love that y'all do that. And actually, during the pandemic, our office was very close to our house. So we actually had a nanny at the time, and my husband and I went into the office. It's crazy that, like, I needed almost that separation from church and state.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was imperative for me. Maybe business owners, I know I have some form of ADD, and for me to be distracted by that it was not going to work well,
I'm
especially during a stressful period like COVID.
I'm the same exact way. Yeah, I'm a better parent when I'm not with my kids all day every day, right? Like
right.
it's if I'm in the zone on work, I can get way more stuff done in a far more condensed amount of time. If I'm just in the office, close the door and knocking stuff out. And then when I'm home, I can be 100% present. Because otherwise, as business owners, like, no matter where you are, you're always 20% somewhere else too, mentally, you know?
Yeah.
And so I can be, not 50%, but I can be 95% present now. If I go to the office and I just hammer out work, and then I can try to, like, consolidate that way.
Right, exactly.
So I don't know if you know this, but I have a software company.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So it's high level on it.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Rockwell Automation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes.
So one of the fixers from Rockwell Automation, pretty high up, and he was like the go-to guy at Rockwell, that whenever companies had issues and they couldn't figure it out, they go to Rockwell, and then this guy was like the fixer at Rockwell and so he was one of my big investors.
Awesome.
And he would jump on, he's very analytical and very, process oriented, and he would jump on the calls, and he had over $1 million in a single deal, and so he'd jump on our weekly KPI calls in order to talk through metrics and how the deal's going and all this other stuff. And we would have, like, a property management software open, we'd have QuickBooks open, we'd have Google Drive open, we've had like a workflow management, and we've had, and then somebody's got some stuff written up on the whiteboard that nobody else can see, and he's like, how is this not all just kind of like in one spot?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there's not anything that has it all in one spot. You need all these different softwares in order to then put it all together. And that got his wheels turning. And over the course of the next year or two, he's like, Tim, we got to sit down, blah, blah, blah. And so we essentially, he left there in order to go full time and start this software business. It's called Smart Management, and so for the past 2.5 years we've been developing it, and we just started working on it internally, but it's an AI software for property management.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So it integrates, like, the core of it is a CRM with a financial management with a workflow management. So it's like any sort of CRM system with QuickBooks integrated with it, with a workflow, like an Asana type thing. So it's all in one. We went through the whole banking thing instead of just bringing in like an API with Stripe or something. It's all integrated. We went through the whole banking and set it all up, and it took a lot more time than we thought. But
software always does.
Yeah. But it's like ninja. And so we're at this stage where we're testing it with my own portfolio, and the beauty of it, it's kind of cool because we have like this parent company with the IP that's like this core functionality, I guess, and then we have the property management element where we have our SOPs and all that kind of stuff all integrated, and it's better than any of the other softwares that are out there right now from a property management standpoint. There's like, I don't know, the top 7 of them are all billion-dollar companies, so it gets me kind of excited on that one. But the core functionality can also work for like construction management. We're talking to somebody on a mortgage origination side of things. And we're even gonna, I think we're gonna do it for like membership-based organizations where we don't even need to charge for the software on that side of things because we already have the core functionality built out, and because the payment processing is so, we went direct to set it all up. It costs us like 1.9%. So for like a credit card, we can charge 2.9, which everybody else does, and give the software away for free for organizations and stuff, and we still make enough money. So the beauty of it is because we have the core functionality, we can create and stand up all these like subsidiary entities, kind of like they're all their own software businesses, without the amount of like spend and debt and all that stuff. Because he left and he took the top 2 guys and built out this unbelievable core software, but now we're at the stage where it's like, Christina,
it's like
we need a team. We need this person, this person, this person, and then stand this thing up. But they were able to do it very efficiently, pretty quickly and for a lot less money than it would normally cost
Right.
to go and outsource a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, lean startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
However you can, if you get the top guys to do it, and I imagine with property management software, like you said, that can go across different verticals too. I mean,
And so that's what's really exciting about it, and it's all like AI driven and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of automations in place and helps owners kind of reduce their expenses and shows them where they can increase income and all this other stuff. So it not only is the software, it's a one software that has everything built in. Because like right now, I have to go to my property management software. It only gives me the financials on the property, and then I have to take those financials and put it into QuickBooks, and then pay my mortgage, and then pay my investors, and I have like
So
the tax,
clunky.
and all this
Yeah.
other stuff. And then I have a different software that does the capital management for all my investors that come in, and then I have to. It's like this takes 6 different softwares and puts it into one, but it only costs one, and that's way more efficient and shows you how to make more money. So we're really, really excited about it.
that's great.
But even more so, I like the idea of being able to stand up different verticals in different industries
Absolutely.
pretty quickly and pretty inexpensively for any other industry, because it the CRM with the financial management with the workflow management can go in any industry.
We're
any business.
using disparate tools right now, right? I mean, between our CRM, Asana, which we use, and then our accounting software, we use Xero, which is a cloud-based, and you're plugging in all this information,
Move
right?
it from one to one. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. We're pretty excited about it, and I think it could turn into something. It's just, what does that look like? And I've never built a software business, but I brought, it's all self-funded, right? So I brought money, I brought the idea, with my buddy Brian, put it all together. We've given him all of our SOPs and stuff, and so now it's like, all right, now what do we do? Right now, who do we bring in to really drive this thing? I have influence in the real estate space, so I know that I can get it up, and we really.
And then if there's channel partnership around that too, I mean, you would think that's probably the play.
So we have like a lot of really cool stuff that's going on that. But I'd love to talk to you offline and just kind of give you the business plan and give you the strategy, and then talk through, put this person in place, put this service in place, and all that.
Yeah, love to.
Anyways.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's cool. Here's something. I see this growing trend of people going towards VAs, right? For at least administrative jobs, tasks that are easily repetitive, right?
Right.
And things that you can train somebody on one time and then they just go and do it over and over and over and over again. That maybe doesn't need, although I see some VAs that are like really, really qualified, really intelligent, really, they got MBAs or they have doctorates sometimes in other countries, and they can problem solve and they can make decisions and all that kind of stuff. So tell me about the VA world. What do you see that's good going on with virtual assistants?
Yeah.
Where do you see the gaps with virtual assistants? And is that something that you guys are working on also?
Yeah, that's it's interesting because we partner, one of our longest term clients actually got into that whole space and stood up a company around that to say, hey, this is the future. Like, you don't need someone right next to you to manage your calendar, book your tickets, and essentially be there. We do not operate in that space, but just knowing him and knowing like what they set out to do, it was very forward thinking, like ahead of even everyone being remote and all that.
Well, I think the beauty of it is people obviously need the mid-level management and the executives, and at the same time, they need the admins. They need the support folks, somebody to put marketing stuff together or whatever that looks like. And what I've seen is, let's say you place somebody one time and you make, I don't know, whatever it is, 25% of whatever the first year salary is as a one-time transaction. To me, that's like flipping real estate, right? So I flip my property, I get paid really, really well, then I do it again. Yeah, I have relationships with, people who are supplying me deals or people who are buying deals where there's...
But it's a one-time transaction.
But it's a one-time, it's a transactional type thing. I think the thing that gets me excited about the VA side is you're probably referring that stuff out anyways, right? Maybe there's a residual or maybe there's some sort of an affiliate that you can earn from it. But at the same time, most of the VA companies are, I bill you at $15 an hour, use this VA, you pay them $8 an hour, right? And there's ongoing $7 an hour spread forever, or whatever that, it starts creating that residual and that recurring revenue, which is what all the software companies are
Yeah.
after, you know? And
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to think of like, you know, is that something that you guys would see opportunity in, or anything that you guys have ever looked at doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually, not so much on the VA side, but on the contractor side. So we do have contractors. We have about 75 contractors that work for us, where it is that recurring revenue.
I like that.
And
Smart.
yeah, and it's in a different capacity. It's we actually have a lot of developers that are contractors through us, right? So they're their own independent, maybe LLC, but they work through us in order to get projects.
On a job base in order to
Yeah.
get something off the ground, and
Right.
then it's maintained by somebody else, but they can do that initial
Exactly.
effort.
Yeah. And in another scenario, we call it contract to hire, where, you know, they're sort of testing out the company and the company is also testing them out. So they could be on contract for 6 to 12 months. And if they both agree, like, hey, we want to make this a permanent thing, it's like dating before you're married, right? Like, yeah, let's do this. Let's start and actually have that employer agreement. So we found that that is super beneficial, especially in light of everything that's happened, is you can do like more of those contract engagements. And there's a lot of statistics out there about how many people have gone that route. You know, like the unemployment is not always an accurate number, because there's so many self-employed or people that have gone and like started a business or done something on the side. So yeah, we do that more for like technical roles, or really any role within a company that they would prefer to be more on like a contract basis.
Well, I think it's that testing it out. Let's make sure it's a good fit for the employee. Let's make sure it's a good fit for the employer, where it's like, we can revisit this every 90 days. Make sure you're happy, make sure I'm happy. All right, let's give it another 90 days. And then, all right, hey, we like this relationship. Let's keep on moving forward.
Exactly.
I really like that. You know, sometimes it's tough to do. I think it's probably tougher to do if you're like, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're dictating their hours and all that kind of stuff, it's a little bit more difficult.
Right.
I'm thinking from like a property management standpoint, or a leasing agent, or a maintenance person, or something like that. It's a little bit tougher.
That's a little bit more challenging, because you're setting, you know, like the expectation of being on site at a certain amount of times, versus, you know, a role that is more project based. Like you can literally, like on Upwork, I mean, if you have a content writer, a copywriter, I mean, you're watching them actually like type out, you know, so you know they're doing the work that you need them to do.
It's more task based.
Exactly.
So from your perspective, how many, like, where are the big gaps with employers and in their hiring process? Like, what are you seeing people do consistently wrong over and over and over again?
Right.
Where it's like, you know, you're banging your head against the wall trying to like get through to this business owner, because it's like, you know, what does that look like? And so what made me think about this is, I always wanted to 1099 everybody when I first got started, because I didn't want employees, I didn't want overhead, I didn't want benefits, I didn't want any of that stuff. And then somebody's like, dude, if you want to be a real business owner, you got to act like a real business owner and offer real business owner compensation plans, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
PTO and benefits and all the perks. Yeah.
Yes, you got to do it. And I was like, okay, you're right. I'm incongruent with what I say I want and how I'm acting, and I need to get us on the same page, which. Great. All right. So, and it's not as big of a hurdle as I think we make it out to be in the beginning.
I agree.
Of, you know, you call up an HR professional and they set you all up with employee benefits and, you know, health plans and all that kind of stuff, and it's a one-time rip the Band-Aid off, and okay, everybody moves on with their life.
Right. And now we're both paying taxes. Yeah.
And now we're paying taxes, and you know, you're able to attract better talent way. So that's one thing that I've seen. What are some other ones that you've seen where employers have really kind of, they're missing the mark, and something like a couple of fixes that they can do in order to really attract better talent to their team?
Yeah, the list could go on, but I think, you know, what we generally see, so there's a couple things on the hiring front. I think it's great to be diligent about your hiring, but if you take too long in between those interviews or at offer stage, you just lose that momentum of a candidate, right? Or there's a little bit of this, like, do they not have their act together, right? If I'm waiting 30, 45 days between like time of interview and offer, so it's that speed to market too, especially if it's a highly sought after skill set. I would say too, you know, like with employers, and you mentioned the transactional part, right? Like, I think there's been this like pendulum swing where employees for a period of time were demanding a lot, but now it's kind of going the other way. But we have to make sure we keep that balance of, making sure the benefits are those that employees actually want, right? Not just your standard, healthcare, 2 weeks vacation. Just survey your employees and ask them what they want too. And I think that's a missed mark where.
What are you seeing in that space? Like, what are you seeing? What are people looking for more of?
Definitely work-life balance, right? So we at Catch do unlimited PTO. So after 1 year, our team has unlimited PTO, and that can be scary to a lot of business owners to hear that, but we're very much accountable to performance and, making sure, like, no one takes advantage of it, right? It's a conversation with your manager, and you've earned that time, so take that time off. And I think that's been a real advantage that we've been able to offer. I think gone are the days of like ping pong tables and dogs in office. Like, employees want a real connection. There was a survey about Google a few years ago, and like an award-winning culture, right? And everyone thinks, oh, well, of course they're going to come back in this survey and they're going to talk about the free lunches and this amazing just environment that we've created. But what they found out was more one-on-one time with their manager. It's that feedback. It's the relationship with your manager. And it's something so easy to do a check-in every 30 days. Like, some of these benefits are no cost or low cost, How do you forge those relationships? And I've always been big on, like, even if someone is not right for the organization, like, find that out early, and you're not going to be able to do that if you're not checking in with them.
No, I think that's, I think the 3 big things that come to mind for me is, like, make sure you screen your employees the same way that I screen my tenants. Make sure that you're screening your employees. The second thing is, like, training them really well, making sure that they're spending the time. And I've gone through not doing this, and not doing the third one that I'm about to mention, and learned through the way of making sure they're trained, making sure they have the resources, make sure they have the connections. And then the third one would be the follow-up of measuring performance and offering feedback and all those kinds of things. And we're pretty good at screening now. We're pretty good at training now. My COO is really good at follow-up. I need to be better at it personally. And I've gotten that feedback from the team of, like, hey, I just want to talk with Tim. I want to,
Exactly.
It's like we're all just going at 100 miles an hour, but to dedicate one day to hop on a phone call for 15 minutes with each employee.
And that's all it takes.
It's not huge. And I think that personal touch really makes a big difference.
Right. Like, one of our core values at my former company was people first, right? That was our core value. Above all things, it's the person, because your most valuable asset is driving in and out of your parking lot or logging on and off every day, And I think that it's becoming a lost art because of so much that's happened in the market is, putting the person above the situation. So just something like that, whether it's the check-in or doing a pulse survey. We always say at our performance reviews, we still do an annual performance review with my team. Nothing should be a surprise here, because I've already talked to you, over the course of the last 12 months. So when we're sitting down, like, nothing here should be a surprise. And that's definitely, I think, a gap that employers have, where it's like the traditional performance review and the hammer's being laid down, where it should be, we've already talked about the areas of opportunity and the things you do really well. So at this point, like, we're having a conversation about what next year is going to look like.
No, I love that. I think it's such a great piece of advice, because otherwise there's just this dichotomy occurs of, like, the employee expecting something over here, the employer expecting something over here, and all of a sudden you get to the end of the year and you're too far apart, versus just kind of righting the ship, making sure that the coordinates are moving in the same direction all the time, and then you're always right there, and then, like you said, there's no surprises.
Exactly, right. And that's such a great analogy of, like, just, if you're moving the Titanic, right? I mean, there's obviously little adjustments you can make versus this big divergence, and then you're so off course that you're like, obviously this is just not working for us. But I heard an interesting quote yesterday. Someone said, we have to be more cognizant of, maybe you like someone personally, but it's just not working out in your organization. And I think that employees sometimes think that the company should change for them, but they've been operating for so long. And not that we don't ask for feedback, but I think that employees need to be aware too that, like, sometimes it's just, it doesn't match your personal core values, and sometimes it's just, it's a mismatch.
Yep. I think the core values thing is probably the most important piece to hire on. at least in my perspective, right? I remember being on a phone call with, his name's Tito Beveridge. He's the guy who started Tito's Vodka. And
good guy to know.
yeah, and so talked with him in 2017, like right when they really started growing pretty considerably. And he was on a call with about, I don't know, 15 of us in a mastermind group. And one of my buddies was at the Four Seasons, and he was there in the hot tub, and he was like, dude, will you hop on a call? And so got this guy on a call. And he talked to us, shared his entire story for 2 hours. And my biggest takeaway was, he said, I'd never started an organization, didn't know what I was doing. You know, like I learned the process by doing the process of distilling vodka and testing out different flavors and all this stuff, and then got rid of the flavors and just went all in on plain vodka, and got to a point where he started really growing, really scaling, and really starting to having to hire people.
Right.
And initially he hired people who knew how to do those things, but they were jerks, right? Or they didn't have core values that aligned, or they had a bad attitude, or whatever it was. And then he stopped doing that and just hired people who had good attitudes.
Right.
People who were fun to work with, people who were excited, people who were happy, people who were thankful, and had those core values that he was looking for, and he just hired fun people. And he goes, now I'm at, I think he was at 200 or 400 employees, something like that. And he goes, when we come to work, everybody's excited. Everybody's in a good mood. It's like such positive energy
and you
in the
can feel
organization.
it.
Yeah, you can actually feel it when you walk through the door. Everybody's high-fiving each other all the time. And he goes, I can train the skills. You can't train a good attitude.
No.
And the core values was the key, and making sure that you're hiring good people whose values align with what your values are. And then you paint the vision, and you can train them on the skill set. Like that's stuff that I don't worry about. I care about the attitude.
And the aptitude to do it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that was something I learned at our former company, Spark, where we had a chief evangelist, and he used to talk about the book Zappos. I mean, Zappos had an award-winning culture and all the things that they would do. And the core values thing, I mean, I think it can sound cliche, right? You're like, oh, what are your personal core values? But when you really sit down as a team and talk about what it takes to be successful, and then measure your team against that, we're going through the process of EOS over the last 6 months, which has been incredible. And one of the people analyzers is, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it? And if you really think about that in your company, it's such a powerful tool with hiring, performance plans, or realizing that someone's not a match.
Well, it's the 10 Commandments, right? People follow the 10 Commandments from a religious perspective and spiritual perspective because it helps them make decisions on what the right things to do versus the wrong things to do, or what they should be doing. It's kind of like, core values. I just thought it was a bunch of stuff, words written on a wall, at Google, and I never really gave it any real attention or deserving that it probably did deserve. And until I really started building a team, and I was like, these are our 10 Commandments. Like, this is what we stand by. And it doesn't matter what your role is. You act like an owner, you think like an owner, and you do this, and you show up in loyalty, and always do the right thing, even if it's not the right thing for the bank account. Do the right thing. Right. Honesty is always the best policy, no matter what. Even if it's bad news, it's better than no news, or making something up. And so things like that are core values of ours in our organization. It's like, hey, well, guess what? Somebody made a decision based on what was best for the pocketbook and not the right thing to do. It makes it very black and white on how to move forward. Do you lay somebody off? Do you hire somebody? Like, when times are tough and the walls are converging on you and you can't see outside of the corn maze that you're in, trying to figure out what the next decision is, you go back to those, and it makes it very clear on that next decision.
Right, right. And like having guidance around that too, not just saying, hey, you made a bad decision one time, like let's go back and look at our values and realize this was not the right decision to make. And I think that, so one of ours at Catch is always forward, right? Because what we do is really, I mean, any sales job, right? You can have days that are really high and days that are not, that are lows, and always to just keep the end in mind, right? That it's a journey and that the rear view is smaller than the windshield for a reason. So we always say, like, always forward. And I think if you bring it into your vernacular every day too, instead of just being like, hey, it's on the wall or it's on your badge or on our website, we talk about it, and I think that that's important, because otherwise they're just words on a wall or on on a website. So.
No, I agree 100%. I love that. There's a reason the windshield's bigger than the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Where do you see the labor market over the course of the next 12 months or so? Do you see things heating up? Do you think people are going to be moving? Do you think? I mean, you had alluded to more people are kind of staying put for right now, kind of seeing what the landscape looks like.
Right.
Do you think that's going to continue, or I don't know, a change in regime on the presidential level potentially? Like, what are the people talking about in the labor side? Things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the election is obviously going to have an impact on the economy at scale, and that will affect the job market. Right now, what we're seeing more on the company side is that companies are being more critical about what they hire. You know, they're combining jobs too. So when they used to hire maybe an accountant and a controller, they're hiring, you know, someone to do both, basically. I think on the labor market, you know, people still certainly need jobs, right? I mean, even though unemployment is low, there's been like marketing specifically, customer success, those roles that are sometimes considered nice to have. Those are the ones where we're really seeing a lot of that churn and burn.
Yep.
But I do feel like the sentiment in the economy overall is like it will likely stay consistent until we get to the election, and then I think things will definitely stir back up.
Yeah, I mean it's every election, every presidential election, people get so polarized and they get so the world's going to end and this and that and all this other stuff, and I just keep on reminding myself that like it doesn't matter who the president is, because 99% of your successes and failures will still be there.
Exactly.
Because of you, right?
Yeah.
There's 1% that gets dictated by the economy. It's like, how resourceful are you? You know, how do you problem solve? How do you attract good people to your organization? That's not based on who the president is. It's based on who you are and who you are as a leader.
Right.
You know, and like you control 99% of all this stuff, and you control 100% of how you respond to what happens to you. You know, it's like, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you that really dictates your success in life and in business. And I feel like, you know, all these people pointing at who's going to be the president and all this other stuff, I'm like, who cares? You know, like I don't care. I made money under Biden, I made money under Trump, I made money under Obama, I made money under, who was before that, Bush?
Right.
So,
I think it's
it's
who
like,
you surround yourself with.
And I lost money under all of them too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it doesn't really matter. So again, it's who are you surrounding yourself with. That's a great point. And I think the resourcefulness. I always come back to that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think a labor market is, and I'm sure just like you said with residential or property, I mean it's the same thing, right? Housing market, commercial market, up and down. And it's identifying those pockets of opportunity. And again, maybe because I am an entrepreneur, I'm always very optimistic. So for me, I feel like things are going to continue to just get better. Like we've seen the worst of it, the layoffs and everything that have happened the past 2 years. It's been a hard market for a lot of people in tech. But out of everything, and there's a direwolf analogy that I've used where they didn't adapt. Like as things were changing and they only had one source of food, whereas the American wolf adapted to what it ate and the predatory side, and actually became the only one that survived, right? So I think with like, you have to adapt. You can't just say this is my only customer and we're not gonna, you know, diversify. And that was a big strength of ours during COVID. Like we saw healthcare, the federal space being the ones when all the commercial positions shut down, we were like, okay, what do we know is gonna come through during this pandemic? And even now, like we identify pockets where we see that momentum and opportunity. And you said that, being resourceful and like identifying those trends.
Yep. And I like what you said about the long-term vision, right? Like we're not looking right now, if you drive a car by looking at the steering wheel, you're going to crash, right? But if you drive a car by looking down the road, it's like that emotional roller coaster. There's highs and lows, and on any roller coaster, how do you stop from flying off of it? Keep the bar down, right? So keep the bar down on your expectations, right? Don't get too low when things are low. Don't get too high when things are high. Just maintain the long-term vision, and I think making decisions based on the long term, as opposed to like making decisions based on your short-term circumstances.
Yes.
always thinking, is this best for 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road? I think that is going to help you make better decisions, throughout your career, throughout your business, as opposed to the short-term stuff. I think can really derail somebody or send them in the wrong direction.
Oh, totally agree. Just like the Rockefeller, where he talks about rocks, like how do you fill your jar? Focus on the big rocks first, then the pebbles, then the sand. And I think, there's Accidental Salesperson is a book, one of the first business books I ever read. And especially because we're all in sales ultimately, right? Like salespeople identify their success by the busyness of their day versus like, what did you accomplish?
Productivity, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So Christina, where can people find you or connect with you?
Yeah, so catchtalent.com is our website. I'm really active on LinkedIn, so it's Christina Lock on LinkedIn. And then obviously, connect that way or by email.
And we'll put all your connections, all your handles for social media and your website and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. So make sure you guys connect, especially if you're in the software and the tech space and you need some quality people in your organization. She's the go-to person. So appreciate you guys being here. Hey guys, hopefully you got a ton of great takeaways. Make sure you're connected with Christina on social media. She's putting out good content about how to retain employees, how to hire, fire, best HR practices overall, and especially if you're in the software tech space, she's a great resource to know in order to bring quality people to your team and help you expand and grow your organization. So I'd love to hear some of your favorite takeaways in the comments below, and if you would, please like and subscribe to the channel. We're always trying to bring great content to small business owners who are looking to scale their business, scale their revenue, scale their lifestyle. So until next week, we'll see you on the Legacy Podcast.